Princess Lyra's chains rattled as the guards dragged her through the marble halls of the imperial palace. Her silver skin had lost its usual glow. Dulled by 3 days in the detention cells, the council had made their decision. For her crime of speaking against the war with humanity, she would become the first of her kind to marry one of them. The Velkhari people considered humans barbaric. Strong, yes, but primitive. They ate cooked meat, spoke in harsh tones, and worst of all, they had actually won battles against the Empire. Lyra's crime wasn't just speaking against the war. She had suggested peace. She had called the humans worthy of negotiation. The council saw this as treason. Her father, Emperor Thane, watched from his throne as they brought her before him. His 4 eyes held no warmth. 2 of her brothers stood beside him, smirking. They had always wanted her gone. Now they had their wish. You will marry Captain Ryan Hayes of Earth. He arrives tomorrow. The ceremony will happen immediately. You will live on his world, never to return to Velkhar. Perhaps living among the beasts you defended will teach you the error of your ways. Lyra kept her head high despite the fear coursing through her veins. Velkhari physiology was delicate compared to humans. Their bones were lighter, their bodies requiring carefully controlled environments. Earth's gravity alone could damage her over time, and humans were known for their physical strength. Stories spread through the empire of human soldiers bending steel bars, lifting debris that would require machinery for any other species. The guards threw her back into her cell. Tomorrow, her life as she knew it would end. She curled up on the cold floor, her willowy frame shaking. Not from cold, but from terror of the unknown. What would this human do to her? Would he see her, as the council did, as a traitor? Would he hurt her, simply because he could? The next morning came too quickly. Servants dressed her in traditional wedding garments, white fabric that seemed to glow against her silver skin. They wove crystals into her long white hair. They painted her face with ceremonial marks. Through it all, Lyra remained silent. The ceremony room filled with council members and nobles, all wearing expressions of satisfaction. They enjoyed watching her humiliation. The doors opened, and Captain Ryan Hayes entered. Lyra's breath caught. He was tall, powerfully built, with dark hair and green eyes that scanned the room before landing on her. He wore his military uniform, dark blue with insignias she didn't recognize. His jaw was set, his expression unreadable. He walked with confidence, each step measured and deliberate. The ceremony was brief. The high priest spoke in the old language, binding them according to Velkhari law. Ryan repeated the words he was told to say, his accent thick, but his pronunciation adequate. When it was done, Lyra's freedom was officially gone. She belonged to this human now. By law and custom, Ryan offered her his arm. She hesitated, then placed her slender hand on his forearm. The muscle beneath was solid, warm through the fabric. He led her from the ceremony chamber, without a word. His ship waited in the landing bay, sleek and human-made, so different from Velkhari vessels. They boarded in silence. Ryan nodded to his crew, a small group of 4 humans who watched Lyra with curiosity but not hostility. The ship lifted off, leaving Velkhar behind. Lyra watched through the viewport as her home planet grew smaller, tears streaming down her face. Ryan stood nearby, saying nothing. After several minutes, he spoke for the first time since the ceremony. There's a cabin prepared for you. You should rest. We have a long journey ahead. His voice was deeper than Velkhari males, but not unkind. Lyra nodded, not trusting her voice. A crew member, a woman with red hair, led her through the corridors to a small but comfortable room. The bed looked impossibly soft compared to her cell floor. Alone, Lyra finally let herself collapse. She had gone from princess to prisoner to wife in the span of 4 days. And tonight, She would face whatever this human husband expected of her. The thought made her tremble again. She was so fragile compared to him. If he chose to harm her, there was nothing she could do to stop him. Hours passed. Lyra couldn't sleep despite her exhaustion. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in," she whispered. Ryan entered, and Lyra's heart began to race. This was the moment she had been dreading. He closed the door behind him, and she pressed herself against the far wall, her silver eyes wide with fear. He stopped immediately, his expression shifting to something she couldn't quite read. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly. "I know what they told you about humans. I know what you must think of me. But I'm not here to hurt you." The tension in the small cabin was thick enough to cut. Ryan moved slowly, deliberately keeping distance between them. He pulled the single chair away from the desk and sat down, making himself less imposing by lowering his height. Lyra remained pressed against the wall, her breathing shallow and quick. "I need you to understand something," Ryan continued, his green eyes steady on hers. "I didn't ask for this marriage any more than you did. The treaty negotiations included this clause. Your council wanted you gone, and Earth's diplomats saw an opportunity for a permanent connection between our species. I was ordered to accept." Lyra found her voice, though it came out barely above a whisper. "You were forced as well?" "Not quite forced," Ryan admitted, "but strongly encouraged. I'm a decorated officer. Refusing would have meant the end of my career and possibly the peace talks. They made it clear that I was the only candidate they trusted for this situation." "Why you?" Lyra asked, curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. Ryan leaned back in the chair, his posture relaxing slightly. "Because I've studied Velkari culture for 3 years. I was part of the first contact team. I've read your literature, learned your language, and I understand how delicate your physiology is compared to ours. They needed someone who wouldn't accidentally hurt you through ignorance." Lyra processed this information. The council had chosen him specifically because he knew about Velkari fragility. That didn't align with their stated goal of punishing her. "I don't understand," she said. "If they wanted to punish me, why send me to someone who would be careful with me?" Ryan's expression hardened. "Because your council is playing a longer game. They want this marriage to fail, but they want it to look like Earth's fault. If I harm you, even accidentally, it gives them justification to resume hostilities. They've set us both up." The realization hit Lyra like a physical blow. Her father and the council wanted her dead, but they wanted humanity blamed for it. She was a political pawn even in her exile. "So what happens now?" she asked, her voice steadier. "Now we figure out how to survive this together," Ryan said. "I have no intention of touching you without your permission. I respect your culture's beliefs about physical contact between newly bonded pairs. I know the traditional waiting period is 1 lunar cycle of your home world." Lyra's eyes widened. He really had studied her people. Most Velkari didn't even follow those old customs anymore. But the fact that he knew them meant he had delved deep into their history. "You know our ways," she said. "Not quite a question. I know enough to understand that you're terrified right now, and you have every right to be. You've been ripped from your home, forced into a marriage with an alien species, and threatened with a life on a world that could literally crush you under its gravity. I'm not going to add to that fear." 9. Ryan stood slowly, and Lyra tensed again. He noticed and froze. "I'm just getting the information pad from my jacket. May I?" She nodded, watching as he reached into his uniform jacket and pulled out a thin electronic tablet. He set it on the desk between them. "That contains everything I've compiled about Earth accommodations for Velkari physiology. Environmental controls for your quarters, dietary options, gravity adjustment chambers on the ship, medical protocols. I've spent the last month preparing for your arrival." "You knew about me specifically?" Lyra asked. "I knew the council would send someone, and I knew it would be someone they wanted to discard. When I learned it was you, I did additional research. I read your speeches, Princess, the ones that got you in trouble. You weren't wrong about the war. Lyra felt tears threatening again, but for a different reason now. "The war is destroying both our peoples," she said softly. "Thousands dead on each side. And for what? Territory neither of us truly needs? Pride?" "I agree," Ryan said. "That's partly why I accepted this assignment. If we can make this work, if we can show that humans and Valkyrie can coexist peacefully, maybe we can influence the hardliners on both sides." "That's optimistic," Lyra said, a hint of her old spirit returning. "They'll just say you're one exception. Or that I've been corrupted by human influence. I have no now. I have not menses. I have not now." "Probably," Ryan acknowledged. "But it's better than the alternative. Better than letting them turn us into casualties of their political games." Silence fell between them again. But it felt different now. Less threatening. Lyra slowly lowered herself to sit on the edge of the bed, her legs no longer able to support her weight. The adrenaline that had kept her upright was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "I haven't eaten since yesterday morning," she admitted. "I couldn't keep anything down." Ryan's expression shifted to concern. "The medical officer briefed me on Valkyrie nutritional needs. We have supplies prepared. What would help settle your stomach? Something light?" "Where? Do you have Kess seeds?" she asked, naming a common Valkyrie food. "Or anything similar?" "We have something close. Quinoa. From Earth. Similar protein structure. Easily digestible. I'll have it prepared with the mineral supplements your species requires." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Lyra, I know this is an impossible situation. I know you have no reason to trust me. But I give you my word as an officer, and as whatever kind of husband I'm supposed to be, I will do everything in my power to keep you safe. Not just from physical harm, but from being used as a political tool." Before she could respond, he left the cabin. Lyra sat in the quiet, trying to process everything that had just happened. Her wedding night, the thing she had feared most, had turned into something entirely unexpected. Ryan Hayes wasn't the monster she had imagined. He was careful, informed, and apparently as much a victim of political machinations as she was. A few minutes later, the red-haired crew member returned with a tray. On it was a bowl of something that looked similar to Kess seeds, steaming slightly and giving off a pleasant aroma. "Captain Hayes asked me to bring this," the woman said with a kind smile. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Julie Barnes, second in command. If you need anything at all, you can call me through the comm panel on the wall." "Thank you," Lyra said, taking the tray with shaking hands. Julie hesitated at the door. "The captain's a good man, Your Highness. I've served under him for 4 years. He's fair, honorable, and he keeps his word. I know you don't know us, but I wanted you to hear that from someone other than him." After Julie left, Lyra ate slowly. The food was good, surprisingly so. As she ate, she thought about Ryan's words, about the Council's schemes and Earth's diplomacy, about being trapped between two civilizations that saw her as useful only for their own ends. But she also thought about Ryan's carefulness, his preparation, his apparent sincerity. Maybe, just maybe, she hadn't been sentenced to the fate she imagined. Maybe this strange human who had studied her culture and spoke her language with that thick accent could actually be an ally instead of an enemy. The ship hummed around her, carrying her toward Earth and an uncertain future. But for the first time since her arrest, Lyra felt something other than despair. It wasn't hope. Not yet. But it was possibility. She finished her meal and lay down on the soft bed. Sleep came easier than expected, and for once, her dreams weren't nightmares. The journey to Earth took 6 standard days. During that time, Lyra's world expanded beyond the small cabin. Ryan kept his word about giving her space, but he also made sure she understood the ship and her options aboard it. He gave her access to the observation deck, the library of human and Valkyrie materials, and the specially modified gym where lower gravity could be maintained. On the second day, She ventured to the observation deck. The stars looked different from this angle. Constellations she had known all her life twisted into unfamiliar patterns. She stood at the transparent aluminum window, her reflection a ghostly silver outline against the black of space. It's disorienting, isn't it? Ryan's voice came from behind her. She hadn't heard him enter, seeing familiar things from a new perspective. Everything is unfamiliar now, Lyra said. My entire existence has been inverted. Ryan came to stand beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. Your speeches talked about perspective, about how both sides had become too entrenched in their own viewpoints to see the bigger picture. You really did read them, she said, surprised again. 3 times each. You have a gift for language, even translated into human standard. Your argument about the shared resources in the Deneb system was particularly compelling. Lyra turned to look at him. The council called that speech treasonous. I suggested sharing a system instead of fighting over it, and they arrested you 2 days later, Ryan said. I remember. It made the news on Earth. Some of our analysts thought it might be a turning point, that maybe the Velkari leadership was fracturing on the war issue. Instead, they made an example of me, Lyra said bitterly. No, Ryan corrected gently. They tried to bury you. There's a difference. Executing you would have made you a martyr. Marrying you off to a human and sending you away removes you from the political sphere entirely. Out of sight, out of mind. Until something happens to me on Earth, and they can blame you for it. Exactly. Which is why we need to make sure nothing happens to you. Which brings me to something I wanted to discuss. We need to Mehi. We need to Mehi. We need to Mehi. We need to Mehi. Lyra braced herself. What is it? Earth's gravity is 1.1 times what you're used to on Velkar. It's not immediately dangerous, but prolonged exposure will stress your skeletal system and organs. I've arranged quarters for you in a residential complex that has adjustable gravity fields. You'll be able to maintain Velkari standard in your private spaces. That must be expensive, Lyra said. The Earth government is covering it as part of the treaty arrangement. They want this to work too, for their own political reasons. A successful human-Velkari marriage would be powerful propaganda for the peace faction. So we're propaganda tools for both sides, Lyra observed. Essentially, yes. But that gives us leverage too. As long as we're useful to the peace process, both governments have incentive to keep us alive and well. Lyra considered this. She had been trained in political strategy from childhood, preparation for her role in the imperial court. Ryan was right. Their value as symbols could be protective if they played it correctly. You think like a politician, she said. I think like a soldier who's tired of war, Ryan replied. I've seen what the conflict has done. I've lost friends in battles that achieved nothing but adding to the casualty count. If there's a chance to end it, even a small chance, I'll take it. Verdi 4. Verdi 4. Verdi 4. Verdi 4. Over the following days, they fell into a routine. Ryan would check on her in the mornings, making sure she had everything she needed. They would share one meal together each day, usually in the observation deck. He would update her on their progress toward Earth and answer her questions about human culture. Lyra learned that humans were far more diverse than Velkari propaganda had suggested. Ryan told her about different cultures, languages, and belief systems across his planet. He showed her pictures of forests and oceans, mountains and deserts. Earth was beautiful in ways Velkar wasn't. Wild and varied where her homeworld was controlled and uniform. She also learned about Ryan himself. He had grown up in a place called Colorado, in mountains that made Velkar's carefully engineered peaks look insignificant. He had joined the military at 18, young by human standards. He had worked his way up through the ranks, earning his captaincy through skill and dedication rather than family connections. We don't have nobility on Earth anymore, he explained one evening. Not in most places anyway. Leaders are chosen or earn their positions through merit. That must be chaotic, Lyra said. trying to imagine a world without the clear hierarchies she had known all her life. It can be, Ryan admitted. But it also means that someone's worth isn't determined by who their parents were. You're judged by your actions, not your bloodline. Lyra thought about that. On Velkar, she had been important because she was the Emperor's daughter. Here, on Earth, she would be nobody. Just an alien married to a human captain. The thought was both terrifying and oddly liberating. On the 5th day, Julie invited Lyra to the ship's common area. The crew was there, playing some kind of game that involved cards and much laughter. They welcomed her warmly, teaching her the rules and not minding when she made mistakes. She learned their names and stories. Julie had a husband back on Earth and 2 children she missed terribly. Lieutenant Marcus Brown was engaged to be married next year. Ensign Katie Lopez was the youngest, just 22 years old, brilliant with engines and mechanics. Chief Medical Officer Daniel Kim had served with Ryan for 7 years and clearly respected him deeply. They treated Lyra like a person, not a curiosity or a political prisoner. They asked about Velkar, genuinely curious about her culture. They shared their own stories and made her laugh with tales of human customs that seemed absurd to her Velkari sensibilities. That night, as Lyra prepared for sleep, she realized she felt something she hadn't expected to feel again. She felt like she belonged somewhere. These humans, who should have been her enemies, had become something like friends. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Ryan entered, his expression more serious than usual. "We'll reach Earth orbit tomorrow morning. I wanted to prepare you for what comes next." Lyra sat on her bed, gesturing for him to take the chair, as had become their custom. "Tell me, there will be media attention." "A lot of it. The first human Velkari marriage is major news. We'll have to make a public appearance, give statements. The Earth government will want to present this as a symbol of growing peace and cooperation." "More propaganda," Lyra said. "Yes, but necessary propaganda. The more public support we generate, the harder it will be for hardliners on either side to undermine the peace process." "What do I need to do?" "Be yourself," Ryan said. "Tell the truth about why you were sent here. If you're comfortable doing so, let them see that you're not a monster, and that humans and Velkari can find common ground." "Your eloquence is one of your greatest assets, Lyra. Use it." "What about after the media attention? What's our life going to look like?" Ryan leaned forward, his hands clasped between his knees. "I've been assigned to Earth Defense Command headquarters. I'll have regular duty hours, but I'll be home most evenings. The apartment I mentioned has 3 bedrooms, so you'll have your own space. There's a Velkari community in the city. About 40 individuals who emigrated before the war started. They've expressed interest in meeting you, if you want that." "There are Velkari on Earth already?" This was news to Lyra. Small populations in several major cities, scholars, mostly, and some merchants. The war made their position difficult, but Earth has protected them. You won't be completely alone in terms of your own species. Lyra felt a knot of tension she hadn't even known she was carrying begin to loosen. That's good to know. "There's one more thing," Ryan said, his tone shifting to something more hesitant. "The public will expect us to present as a married couple. I know we're not really. But for appearances, we may need to at least look comfortable with each other in public." "You mean we'll need to pretend affection?" Lyra said. "Some basic level of it, yes. Nothing that makes you uncomfortable. But standing together, maybe allowing hand-holding for photographs. Things that show we're partners." Lyra took a deep breath. "I can do that. For the sake of peace, I can pretend." "It doesn't have to be pretending," Ryan said quietly. "I'd like to think we're becoming friends. At least, these past days, talking with you, learning about your perspectives. I genuinely enjoy your company, Lyra." She looked at him. Really looked at him. His green eyes were sincere, his expression open. He had been nothing but kind to her, patient and respectful. Against all odds and expectations, she enjoyed his company too. Friends, she agreed. We can be friends. Ryan smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Friends is a good place to start. 00. 00 He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Lyra, whatever happens tomorrow, whatever the press or the politicians or anyone else says or does, remember that you're not alone in this. I'm with you. We face it together. After he left, Lyra lay awake for a long time, thinking about the strange turn her life had taken. She had been sentenced to wed a human as punishment. She had expected cruelty, violence, or at best, cold indifference. Instead, she had found respect, kindness, and the beginnings of genuine friendship. Maybe her fate really had been rewritten on their first night together, not in the way anyone had expected, but in a way that gave her something she thought she had lost forever: hope. The ship's descent to Earth was smooth, the crew expertly handling the atmospheric entry. Lyra watched from her cabin's view screen as the blue planet grew larger, white clouds swirling across its surface. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache with something she couldn't quite name. Ryan came to escort her to the landing bay. He wore his formal uniform, crisp and decorated with ribbons and insignia that marked his achievements. Lyra wore the Valkyrie formal robes Julie had helped her choose. Deep blue fabric shot through with silver threads that caught the light. Ready? Ryan asked. No, Lyra admitted. But let's do it anyway. He offered his arm, and she took it. His warmth and solidity were becoming familiar now. Comforting, rather than threatening. They walked together through the ship's corridors, the crew standing at attention as they passed, showing respect. The landing bay doors opened to bright sunlight. Lyra's eyes adjusted slowly, and she saw the crowd. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, held back by barriers but craning for a glimpse of the alien princess. Cameras flashed like stars. Reporters shouted questions. Ryan felt her falter and slowed his pace. We walked together, he said quietly. You set the speed. If you need to stop, we stop. They descended the ramp. The noise of the crowd was overwhelming, so different from the controlled audiences of Valkyrie official events. These humans showed raw emotion, excitement, and curiosity in equal measure. Some held signs welcoming her to Earth. Others seemed merely fascinated by the spectacle. A podium had been set up at the base of the ramp. Earth military officials stood waiting, along with civilians in formal dress who Ryan had told her were government representatives. An older woman with silver hair stepped forward, smiling warmly. Princess Lyra, Captain Hayes, welcome home, she said. I'm Secretary Evelyn Torres of the Diplomatic Corps. On behalf of the people of Earth, we're honored to witness this historic union. The word home struck Lyra deeply. This woman had called Earth Lyra's home, not Velkar. Home. Secretary Torres gestured to the podium. If you're willing, we'd love to hear a few words from both of you. Ryan looked at Lyra, letting her decide. She nodded. They approached the podium together, and the crowd's noise decreased to an expectant hush. Ryan spoke first, his voice carrying clearly through the amplification system. Thank you all for coming. 6 days ago, I married Princess Lyra in a ceremony on Velkar. I won't pretend this marriage was entirely voluntary for either of us. It was part of the treaty negotiations, a political arrangement between our governments. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Lyra appreciated his honesty. He continued, but I stand here today not as a man forced into duty, but as someone who has spent the last 6 days getting to know an extraordinary individual. Princess Lyra is intelligent, compassionate, and brave. She spoke out for peace when doing so cost her everything. She lost her home, her family, her entire life because she believed humans and Valkyrie could find a better path than war. I am honored to stand beside her, and I promise to do everything in my power to make this marriage, and the peace it represents, succeed. He stepped back, and Lyra moved to the microphone. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice came out clear and strong, speaking in human standard language, with only a slight accent. I am Princess Lyra of Velkar, daughter of Emperor Thane, and I was sentenced to this marriage as punishment for treason. My crime was believing that your species deserved respect and dignity. My crime was saying that peace was possible, perhaps even necessary for both our peoples to survive. The crowd was absolutely silent now, hanging on her words. I came to Earth expecting nothing but suffering. I expected to be broken by a savage species that my people had taught me to fear. Instead, I have found kindness. I have found humans willing to learn about my culture, to accommodate my needs, to treat me as a person rather than a political pawn. In 6 days, Captain Ryan Hayes and his crew have shown me more respect and consideration than my own council showed in my 26 years on Velkar. Lyra's voice grew stronger, her old eloquence returning. I do not know what the future holds. I do not know if this marriage will succeed, or if the peace between our worlds will last. But I know this. I am tired of war. I am tired of watching both our species die for pride and territory and old grudges. If my exile can serve any purpose, let it be this. Let it be proof that humans and Velkari are not so different. We both love. We both fear. We both hope for better futures. Maybe that's enough to build on. Maybe that's where peace begins. She stepped back from the microphone, and for a moment there was silence. Then the crowd erupted. Not in anger or hostility, but in applause. The sound washed over Lyra like a wave, overwhelming and unexpected. People were cheering for her words, for the possibility she represented. Ryan took her hand, squeezing gently. She squeezed back, grateful for the anchor he provided in the chaos of noise and emotion. Secretary Torres returned to the podium, clearly moved by their words. Thank you both. Your courage and honesty honor us all. We have arranged for you to settle into your new home. Captain Hayes, you report to headquarters in 3 days. Until then, please take time to rest and adjust. More officials came forward to shake hands and offer congratulations. Lyra's arm grew tired from the repetitive gesture, so foreign to Velkari custom but clearly important to humans. Through it all, Ryan stayed close. His presence, steady and reassuring. Finally, they were led to a vehicle, sleek and black, that would take them to their apartment. As the vehicle lifted off, rising above the crowds and flying over the city, Lyra got her first real look at human civilization. The city was vast, sprawling in all directions with buildings that climbed toward the sky. But unlike Velkari architecture, which was all clean lines and uniform beauty, human buildings were chaotic and varied. Different styles, different heights, different colors, all mixed together in controlled pandemonium. It's called Denver, Ryan said, watching her take it all in. It's where I grew up, actually. Not in the city itself, but in the mountains nearby. I requested this posting specifically so I could be close to home. It's so different from Velkar, Lyra said. Everything is different. Is that bad? Ryan asked. She considered the question. I don't know yet. Ask me again in a few months. The vehicle descended toward a tall building, landing on a platform halfway up. Ryan led her inside and down a corridor to a door that opened to their apartment. Lyra stepped inside and stopped, overwhelmed again. The space was large by human standards, with huge windows overlooking the city. But what caught her attention was the careful thought that had gone into the design. The main living area had standard Earth gravity, but one entire section of the apartment, visible through transparent walls, had the soft blue glow that indicated a gravity field adjustment. Her Velkari quarters, where her body wouldn't have to strain against the extra weight. The furniture was a mix of human and Velkari styles. Someone had gone to considerable effort to make this space welcoming for both of them. Ryan watched her reaction carefully. End quote. What are a sense did? What are a sense did? What are a sense did? Do you like it? he asked, and she heard genuine concern in his voice. It's perfect, Lyra said softly. Ryan, thank you. I had help, he admitted. The Velkari community I mentioned. They consulted on the design. There's a woman named Sarah. She's a designer. She led the project. She wants to meet you when you're ready. Lyra walked through the space, touching surfaces, testing the furniture. Everything was thoughtfully placed. Accessible. The kitchen had both human and Velkari preparation areas. The bathroom had a specialized shower that could adjust water pressure for her more delicate skin. In what was clearly meant to be her bedroom, she found more personal touches. A sleeping pad was positioned in the center rather than a human bed, because someone had known that Velkari preferred different sleeping arrangements. There was even a small shrine area, set up for the spiritual practices of her people. How did you know? She asked, turning to Ryan, who had followed her. About all of this? I told you I studied, he said. And when I didn't know something, I asked. The Velkari community was incredibly generous with their knowledge and time. They're excited to meet you, Lyra. You're royalty to them. Someone important who chose peace over power. I didn't choose anything, Lyra said bitterly. I was forced. You chose to speak out in the first place, Ryan countered. You knew what the consequences would be. Maybe you didn't choose this specific outcome, but you chose the path that led here. That takes courage. Lyra sank onto the sleeping pad, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the public appearance was fading. Ryan noticed immediately. You need rest, he said. Real rest. In your own space with proper gravity. I'll be in the main area if you need anything. We don't have any obligations for the next 3 days. You can sleep, explore the apartment, whatever you need. He turned to leave, but Lyra called out to him. Ryan? He paused in the doorway. Yes? Thank you, for all of this. For being kind when you didn't have to be. Ryan's expression softened. Kindness isn't something you have to earn, Lyra. It's baseline decent behavior. You deserve it just for existing. Don't ever think otherwise. After he left, Lyra lay back on the sleeping pad. Through the window, she could see the sun setting over this alien city that was somehow supposed to become her home. The sky turned colors she'd never seen on Velkar. Oranges and purples that painted the clouds with fire. She thought about her wedding night. About how terrified she had been. About how Ryan had sat in that chair and promised not to hurt her. About how he had kept that promise every day since. About how her expectations of horror and pain had been replaced with something entirely different. Her fate had indeed been rewritten, not through violence or submission, but through unexpected kindness and the slow building of trust between two people who should have been enemies. Lyra closed her eyes and let sleep take her, feeling safe for the first time since her arrest. Her first real night on Earth, and she was finally, tentatively, beginning to believe that maybe she could build a life here. Maybe this punishment could become something else entirely. Maybe this human she had been forced to marry could actually become her partner in truth, not just in name. The future was still uncertain, still frightening in its unknowns. But for tonight, in this carefully prepared room, with a kind man just beyond the door, Lyra let herself rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Tonight, she had survived, and that was enough.